So I woke up this morning and chose chaos. I have all the supplies I need for what should be a very quick project. I've had them for a couple months now, and I delusionally think that I can get it done in the next 24 hours, even though it took me about 4 hours to get the pattern together. That's an interesting choice of words. I'm not counting the pattern time because I don't want to. It's about 8 o'clock at night, and we're starting now, as soon as I get this guy off my lap. Okay, so this morning I decided to do this in 24 hours, but this all started months ago when I saw this dress and instantly wanted it. I mean, it's cute and it's covered in Greek red figure pottery. It's for me. Except, obviously, I was not the first person to fall in love with it, so if I wanted it, I was gonna have to make it. The internet had a surprising number of fabric options. Didn't even have to look that hard, which was nice and saved me a lot of time because I would have scoured the known universe if I had to. I ended up buying 2 yards of my favorite, and then it sat in the corner for months. Until today. Let's start the clock. First thing, I cut all 7 pieces of the bodice out of this black cotton. I have a bunch of this fabric. It's cheapish, it's easy to find more of, therefore it is mock-up fabric. I sewed it together real fast, tried it on, and it actually fit. And just like that, it got promoted from mock-up to lining. It is a little different look than the inspiration, but I'm not always a fan of how square some of those apron fronts can look, so I decided to go halfway in between and make a full bodice, but slash off most of the back so that it slopes down to the waistband. Should I have done that before I tried it on? Yes. Do I have a time machine to go back and change that decision? Absolutely not, and that's a really good thing because I would be a very irresponsible person with a time machine. AJ would wake up tomorrow and be like, why is our house full of scrolls? And I would be like, fire got too big, it's only half my fault, we are now the Library of Alexandria. Anyway, I also cut 4 of those skirt panels out of the black fabric, pinned them along the sides, sewed them together, and didn't try them on at all. I might have forgotten to, but I'm gonna say I was trying to save time. 2 hours in, I finally laid out my main fabric and got to cutting that. 4 skirt pieces, 7 bodice pieces, and, well, I'm gonna need pockets. Everyone needs pockets. But I started to cut them out, ran into a pickle, decided that was a problem for at least 20 minutes from now, and found a completely different pickle instead. See, the skirt pieces pinned together made a kind of cute and interesting top, but a less cute and interesting skirt. It doesn't show so much on camera, but it pleated weirdly at every seam and it didn't move. I could have been making this dress out of paper, it just... So I decided to cut off everything that was naturally pleating itself out of existence. It made the skirt a lot straighter, but apparently that's how the skirt wanted to be. I don't argue with these things. At midnight, I stopped for dinner. At 1 a.m., I watched a movie with AJ. And at 3 a.m., I went to bed. Yes, I am about 80% nocturnal, so I'm sure you'll understand when I say that the next morning, at 1 p.m., I got back to work. I wanted to hit the ground running, so I ignored all of the pickles, and I pinned the bodice lining together in a long strip, then pinned all the outer bodice pieces together the same way.
Hi. You gonna let me work?
You know, I'm not very good at understanding my cat's English, so I thought he said yes, but...
Ow, 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 claws, man.
Eventually, he settled down. I sewed the lining just as I had pinned it and ironed all the seams nice and flat. Then I sewed the outer bodice and I could have ironed it, but I just finger pressed the seams open and decorated with a little top stitched on either side of the seam. Nice. I did forget to cut out the waistband the night before, so I did that. Then I cut a piece of this nice ribbon to be the length of my waist, plus a little bit, plus another bit because I'm bad at final decisions. I pinned it roughly down the center of my waistband, eyeballing it because I'm just good like that. And measuring takes too much time. I fixed it in place, sewing as close to the edge as possible so that my black thread would be next to invisible. That was a slow process. It ate time and took all my attention and made me fold myself over my sewing machine like a grown-up sitting at the kids' table. I highly recommend taking breaks to stretch and have the mildest of philosophical debates with whoever is nearby. I've got AJ.
Naps are great.
Sleep. Naps aren't because naps are required to end briefly after this.
Keep your minds and your bodies limber, y'all. Did I mention I have to sew down both sides of the ribbon? When it was finally done, I pinned the waistband to the bottom of the bodice, and I did measure here to make sure that everything would look even after it was sewn because I'm a gremlin, not an evil gremlin. I pinned a second waistband to the lining and I sewed both into place. I had to take a few seconds to try it on and remind myself that I was making something cool and fuel myself with happiness. It's a very crucial step for me, but I'd been skipping it a lot for time, but now I needed it because I did mess up the lining a little bit. I got the fabric snagged wrong and I had to take several inches out and re-sew it, but it was okay because I wasn't looking at the clock and I had happiness. I cut 2 more long strips from the black fabric, about a foot longer than my waistband, for absolutely no reason, but a decision had to be made. I sewed them into neat little tubes. I hooked a safety pin to one end and used them to turn them inside out into neater little tubes. I ironed them perfectly flat until they were the absolute neatest. And then, you probably don't have to do this step if you don't have a house monster, but I removed all the cat hair. I took more ribbon and pinned it down the middle of each tube, and at the top of the tube I just folded the fabric inside itself by about half an inch or so and tucked the ribbon inside as well. Pinned it in place and I thought it looked nice. Then I started stitching the ribbon down. Same as before, folded over my machine, living on the edge of the ribbon, stitching as invisibly as possible. Oh, so slowly. And I could feel the minutes slide through my hands, ticking away. Almost a physical trickle down my spine. I questioned if it would be faster to stitch this by hand. I realized that was an absolutely mad thought, but you might go mad too with your nose almost touching your sewing machine for a small eternity. When it hit 8 p.m., it was almost a relief. I shook it off, decided it was fine. I mean, I was still gonna finish it before I went to bed. I trimmed up the top of the bodice now that I had actually somewhat tried the final pattern on and made sure everything was perfectly even on both sides. I pinned the ribbon tubes to the top edge, stacked the lining on top, pretty sides touching, and I pinned all along that top edge. I double checked that the ribbon hadn't gotten caught anywhere awkward on the inside, then sewed it all together and turned it right side out. Since I had a little time again, I took a moment to breathe. And remembered I still hadn't cut out my pockets. Here's the pickle. I cut the skirt to have exposed pockets, but I wanted the pocket patterns to match the skirt panels exactly. Not a pickle, that's easy enough. But I decided that after I had cut out all the other pieces, and at this point I only had one possible spot to cut each pocket. On this pocket, that's cool, I've got more than enough space. But on this one, pickle. Optimistically, I drew out the shape that would complete the full skirt panel on the safe pocket, then doodled in the rest of a pocket curve. And then I drew it bigger because is it really a pocket if it can't hold my phone? No. I cut it out, flipped it over, and lined it up to where I would need to cut out the pickle pocket. It came out closer than I was scared it would be. That top little bit didn't bother me at all, but that bottom corner. I cut out a little scrap triangle to fill in the gap. Then I cut out 2 black copies of my pockets, but cut their top edges to match the skirt exactly. And then I had an argument with my serger, and took way too long. I sort of rage quit. I ate my dinner and I came back and I realized that the argument had actually been my fault, which was both incredibly frustrating and just so relieving because wow, it felt like I had wasted so much of my time, but man, it was 100% within my power to fix and oh so easy once I understood what was going on. Am I still talking about sewing? So once those 2 edges were serged, I just pinned the triangle patch to the pocket piece to make it complete, double checked that it was the right shape, and ran it through my sewing machine to secure it. Once, twice, 3 times, oh, I think I lost count. It was honestly kind of therapeutic. I pinned a black pocket piece straight to the skirt, sewed it on, and clipped the curve, which is just putting tiny little cuts perpendicular to the seam, getting close to the stitches, which is good, but not actually cutting through the thread, which would be terrible, horrible, no good, very bad, don't do it. Clipping made everything look smooth and pretty when I flipped that black piece around to the back, then I top stitched close to the edge to keep it properly flipped. I pinned the pattern pocket piece to the black pocket piece, sewed around the edge, then pinned all 3 layers together and sewed around that edge again. For extra strength and because I just don't like it when pockets like go on an adventure by themselves without the rest of the dress. And I'm in charge here. And then that pocket was completely finished. I just had to do the exact same thing for the other one. Pin, sew, clip, sew, pin, sew, go to bed. On day 3, I did not work on this dress. I just rage sewed a canine underworld guardian. On day 4, it was finally time to construct the skirt, although I had to start by recutting the lining since that's just not the same shape anymore because, you know, the skirt was doing that thing I didn't like and I fixed it with scissors. And since it worked once, I figured it would work twice and I fixed the lining with scissors too, just slicing where I thought it should be sliced. Somehow, I ended up with half a gigantic flower and I sewed up the new seams real fast. Then I could begin sewing together the outer skirt, which was not complicated or difficult, so just imagine that I did my usual thing, like threw some pins at it, ran it through my sewing machine 9 times, and I made 4 pieces into 1 piece. I tried it on and realized that I have no idea what shape my hips are. Fixed the problem with scissors again. This probably should not be a habit I get into, and oh yeah, that's so much better. It was time to attach the skirt to the bodice, which involved finding the center front of the waistband and the center of the skirt, making them hug, then pinning them together all along that waistband. It also involved pinning the skirt lining in the same way and looking weirdly guilty about it. As far as I know, I broke absolutely no laws here, but I know some of the state laws are weird, like you can't wash your neighbor's car without permission, and you also can't bother lizards at city parks, which is just rude, but I don't know. Someone tell me what rule I broke? Once that was all sewn together, I put in a zipper, which I was too lazy to show you much of so that I could try it on in its entirety for the very first time. It gaped. In a bad way. In a it should be tighter around the top way. In a I have to undo half the work I did today way, which was gonna take hours. Just for your benefit, we'll do it with a snap of my fingers. And then we'll take a moment to appreciate how well that worked and how smooth everything is before I have to quit for the night. Again. On day 5, I rage sewed more canine underworld guardians. And you know, I don't really want to talk about it unless it's about how cute their little tails are, how round their little faces are, how much you just want to adopt one. Seriously, my cats are starting to get uncomfortable with how outnumbered they are. Oh, and I bought a zipper. On day 6, I undid more of my work, because the zipper I originally put into it was too short, and I couldn't get the dress on without dancing into it. And I was in denial about it because I really wanted to get this dress done, but clearly not enough to prioritize it over some completely unnecessary puppies. So I did the responsible thing and I ripped the short zipper out, trimmed out some bulky parts of the waistband that I had also been in denial about, and sewed the longer zipper in. Okay, what's left to do? Sew up the bottom of the seam under the zipper. Check. Top stitch on either side of that seam so that it matches everything else, which couldn't be done without literally picking up my sewing machine and shoving parts of the dress underneath it in a way that, you know, I'm not sure if it's unsafe, but I have a weirdly itchy feeling about it, and I don't think my mother would approve. But check. Top stitch the top of the dress. Check. Decide not to top stitch the waistband. Absolutely check. I love saving myself work. Fold the hem up by about half an inch, sew all the way around. Fold the lining up so that you can't see it from the outside, but it also doesn't pull anything funny. Hand sew it down. Check, 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 and check. At the very end, I solved my last problem with a hammer, which is also not a habit I should get into and still somehow involved scissors. I cut small holes in the back just below my shoulder blades so that I could fit these grommets in, pounded the backs into place until I was very, very, very sure they were properly secure. I obviously needed a lot of convincing. And then I threaded the straps to the grommets and tied them at a good length. In the end, this dress took me 19 hours to complete. Technically, I could have done it in a day,